The biggest warrior in the station grabbed the quiet human girl. He never walked again. Every rumor in the Orbital Hydroponics Spire began with a sound: the soft hiss of nutrient fog, the slow drip of condensate, the low groan of metal roots expanding and contracting with artificial daylight cycles. It was the calmest place on Outpost Yearn 4, a living tower of alien plants suspended between glass and vacuum. Cadets came here to breathe, to study, to pretend the station was something gentler than steel and training drills. She came here to disappear. Lira sat cross-legged at the base of a spiraling water trunk, its bark glowing in slow pulses of blue.
She didn't speak, didn't shift,
didn't react to the thin, drifting pollen that coated her hair in faint silver. She simply watched the way droplets formed on leaves, slid, fell, and vanished into the grate below. Every evening, the spire filled with cadets. Every evening, she found the one quiet corner no one else wanted. Her back straight, her breathing level, her hands still. Humans weren't supposed to be here. The council made that very clear. Only 3 accepted per cycle, and only those who passed background vettings, so harsh the screening itself, had a survival rate. But quotas didn't soften the stares. They sharpened them. Tonight, those stares carried teeth. 2 shadowed figures appeared first, their steps crunching dried moss lining the walkway. A crystalline cadet flickered with amused light, projecting mild translations for those who didn't speak its frequency. Beside it slithered a thin-bodied Averil, its neck frilled with shifting iridescent colors. They weren't the threat. They were the chimes signaling the storm. "Is that her?" the Averil whispered, though whispering did nothing in an echoing vertical jungle. "It is," the crystalline being pulsed. "The little human who never reacts." The words drifted down to Lira like falling spores. They touched her shoulders, her hair, her heartbeat. She didn't move. A third voice cut through the air like a blade dragged against metal. "She sits in our spire again?" The spire quieted. Even the vines seemed to still. Gorath emerged from the fog, his silhouette expanding as he stepped closer. 8 feet tall, plated in natural armor, shoulders spiked with ceremonial ridges. He wasn't just a cadet. He was the reason cadets in 3 sectors trained twice as hard. A born warbeast carved to butcher planets, or so he liked to say. His stride shook the walkway. His breath vented in low growls. His eyes fixed on the human girl meditating under the tree. He hated quiet things. "Lira," he thundered, though she hadn't introduced herself. Bullies rarely need permission to know their target's name. "You choose the spire tonight instead of hiding in your bunk." His entourage snickered. A small wave of mocking light rippled through crystalline facets. The Averil's frill fluttered with excitement. Someone farther up the walkway whispered, "Watch this." Lyra's fingers rested on her knees, still as carved stone. Gorath stepped closer until his shadow swallowed her. "Humans meditate? I thought you'd just freeze when frightened." No reaction. The frill at the Averil's neck pulsed yellow. "Maybe she doesn't understand your dialect." Gorath growled low. "She understands."
She did. She always did.
But responding to petty taunts never saved lives. Silence had saved hers once, long before she stood on the station, long before the spire grew its first glowing leaf. Silence had kept her breathing when the world around her burned. But they didn't need to know that. Tonight, she was just the quiet one. "You sit on our floor," Gorath said, voice rising, "breathing our air, training beside species who evolved strength while yours evolved fragility." The crystalline cadet brightened a mocking hue. "Humans bend. Humans bruise. Humans break." Lira exhaled, the breath long and soft. And that was enough to offend him. A massive hand slammed onto the metal beside her, claws screeching against the grated floor. Moss scattered. Fog trembled. Lira didn't flinch. Not even a blink. Gorath's laughter rumbled like shifting boulders. "She really doesn't react. Look, nothing." "She is frozen," someone said. "She is terrified." But the Averil stared too long, and its frill drew tight. "No," she steadied. Gorath crouched down, lowering his huge frame until he was eye level with the unmoving girl. "Say something, little Earth thing." "Nothing. You survived your death world, didn't you?" he sneered. "Your planet eats your kind alive. Yet here, you sit like an herbivore pretending it has teeth." His claws reached toward her face, stopping a breath away, tips glinting. "You cannot win against me," he murmured. "And you know it." Still nothing. "So, why do you come here?" he demanded. "Why sit here, human?" Lira finally spoke. "Because it's quiet." Her voice was soft. Not timid, soft like sand settling after a storm. Soft like a secret told to the dark. It shouldn't have carried, but in the spire's humidity and echoing columns, every cadet heard her. Gorath blinked. "She speaks." The crystalline cadet flickered. Gorath's grin widened, showing serrated carnivore fangs. "Quiet? You want quiet? Then don't come to my spire." He grabbed her shoulder. The vines rustled overhead. The fog shifted. The bioluminescent leaves dimmed as if exhaling. The cadets leaned forward. Even the irrigation system seemed to pause, pumps holding their breath. Lira didn't rise. She didn't twist toward him. She didn't even tense. Her voice, soft as before, said one thing. "Remove your hand." Gorath laughed.
So did his entourage.
The crystalline cadet pulsed bright with amusement, projecting the translation across the walkway. Gorath tightened his grip. Lyra's head tipped slightly, a fraction, hardly a movement at all. But it marked a line in her mind, one she did not draw often, one she never drew lightly. "I won't repeat myself," she whispered. Her calm unsettled the Averil, whose frill twitched in warning. "Gorath, her pulse is steady." "She's bluffing," he scoffed. The spire, with all its living canopy, seemed to listen. Gorath leaned in, massive weight shifting, claws digging through the fabric at her shoulder. "Stand up, human, or I'll..." He didn't finish. He didn't get the chance. Her hand moved. It was a small motion, a human motion. No roar, no leap, no explosion of strength. Just a simple shift of balance as she reached up, touched his wrist, and applied a pressure no one trained on civilized worlds ever learned to expect. Not strength, not speed. Leverage. Gorath's arm twisted before he understood he was in danger. His throat rumbled with confusion before pain registered. The walkway beneath them hummed as he jerked sideways, instincts flaring too late. Lyra's back never left the tree. Her legs never extended. She remained seated. The sound that followed wasn't loud. Not a snap, more like a wet, muffled shift, a deep internal click that made stomachs turn. Gorath froze. His legs buckled. His pupils dilated in shock. The Averil gasped, frill flattening to its skull. "Gorath." The crystalline cadet's lights flickered erratically. His spine, she. He toppled sideways, armor scraping bark, collapsing like a felled creature of myth. His claws twitched once, then stilled. The entire spire seemed to tilt with him as he dropped. Fog hissed. Leaves trembled. The cadets stared. Lira let go of his wrist. Her breathing remained steady. She looked at her hand, flexed her fingers once, then returned them to her knees as if she had merely brushed away a leaf.
"He'll live," she said.
"But he won't walk." The crystalline cadet's entire body dimmed with horror. She did that sitting down." "No," the Averil whispered. "She did it without moving at all." Wordless fear rippled through the spire. It wasn't the act. It was the restraint, the precision, the calm. Someone bolted for the upper walkway. Someone else whispered, "Deathworlder." Another backed away, fumbling over roots. Moss crackled beneath retreating feet. Lira remained exactly where she was, watching the fog swirl around the fallen warrior. "Leave," she said quietly. Every cadet obeyed. One by one, they fled. The spire emptied until only two figures remained, the quiet human girl sitting under the glowing water tree and the broken body of the station's strongest warrior at her feet. Lira closed her eyes. The fog resumed hissing, and silence returned to the place she came to disappear.
The spire's fog settled slowly, whispering around the roots and platforms as Lira sat unmoving. Nothing echoed except the slow drip of nutrient water feeding bioluminescent vines. The crushed moss beneath Gorath's collapsed frame still held the imprint of his weight. His breathing remained shallow, each inhale shaky and uneven. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. When someone that massive fell a certain way, the outcome was written in their silence. Footsteps eventually returned, hesitant ones, careful ones, not belonging to any of the bullies who fled. A small-bodied cephalid cadet approached from the upper walkway, tendrils dimmed to a fearful gray. It paused 10 meters away. Is he dead? No, Lira said softly. He cannot move. He won't again. The cephalid shivered, its tendrils curling in instinctive defensive knots. You could have killed him. I told him to remove his hand. That was a warning? Yes. The cadet swallowed a pulse of fear. Its species rarely showed emotion, but even its translucent skin couldn't hide the tremor. Why didn't you run? He was stronger. Bigger. His species is bred for combat. Lira finally looked at the cadet. Her eyes weren't angry, or cold, or even proud, they were simply calm. Where I'm from, she said, size does not decide who survives. Only judgment does. But I judged him. She lowered her gaze again, returning to silence as if the last minutes hadn't happened at all. The cephalod retreated quickly, vanishing into the upper fog, leaving her alone once more with the muted glow of the water tree. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. The spire existed outside time when she wanted it to. She could sit here forever, breathing in the faint metallic sweetness of mist, listening to the drip of leaves. She'd learned long ago that predators relied on motion. They searched for flinches, tension, tremors, anything that betrayed fear. But creatures on deathworlds didn't survive that way. They survived by not moving until it was too late for their predators to run. More footsteps approached, heavier this time, steadier. Lira didn't open her eyes until she heard the faint metallic clink of the station enforcer's insignia. The enforcer, a broad-shouldered avian hybrid with razor-barbed feathers, surveyed the scene. Its gaze lingered on Gorath's still form, then on the human girl sitting beneath the glowing trunk. You were involved, it said. Yes. You broke him. He broke himself, she murmured. I only changed the direction. The enforcer tilted its head, observing her with curious detachment. Your file warned us you were calibrated differently. She let the silence speak. After a moment, the enforcer crouched beside Gorath, checked vitals, and exhaled a slow whistle. Spine displacement. Severe. It paused. You used minimal force. I used enough. And you're certain there was no alternative? He didn't listen to my first warning. And if he had listened? He'd be standing. The enforcer studied her for another long moment, then flicked its wrist, summoning a med drone. It hovered over Gorath, extending grasping limbs to lift him. As it carried the massive warrior toward the exit, the enforcer straightened. Station protocol demands a report. I understand. But I've reviewed your background, the enforcer added. Humans from deathworld colonies are conditioned for decisive action. She met its gaze without blinking. We're conditioned to survive what others do not. A faint ruffle of feathers, approval, or respect, or something between them. I will note that he initiated the contact. And that you gave him a chance. Lira didn't nod. But the subtle easing of her shoulders said enough. The enforcer left. The spire fell quiet again. She leaned back against the glowing trunk, letting out a slow breath that had waited years to escape. She hadn't wanted this. Violence, attention, fear, but sometimes violence crawled toward you with claws extended. Sometimes survival demanded precision, not mercy. And today, for the first time on this station, the predators learned they weren't the only ones who knew how to wait. The spire lights dimmed into their simulated night phase. Vines retracted slightly, conserving glow. Fog thickened. The Tower of Life became a giant breathing lung of blue and silver. She let the silence soak through her like an old familiar rain. Then someone else approached. Soft steps. Hesitant. Not mocking. Not afraid. A young insectoid cadet emerged from behind a cluster of spiral reeds. Its antennae were coiled tightly, not in hostility, but in confusion. "You didn't kill him," it said. "No. But you could have." "Yes." The insectoid shifted awkwardly, wings fluttering with uncertainty. "Before tonight, we thought humans were just strange. Quiet. Soft. We didn't think you were dangerous." Lira didn't answer. The cadet moved closer, stopping just within the boundary of her silence. "Why don't you fight back sooner? Why wait until the last moment?" Her eyes lifted to the faintly glowing canopy above. "Because where I'm from, you only strike once. If you strike too early, you die. If you strike too late, you die. You learn to wait until the only option left is the correct one." The cadet absorbed that, its wings settling. "But you were sitting. You didn't even stand." "I didn't need to." A long pause filled the space between them. "You're not a monster," the insectoid said finally, voice small but firm. Lyra's lips parted, not a smile, not quite, but something warmer than the cold stillness she usually wore. "Neither are you." The cadet's wings fluttered, startled by kindness. "Will they fear you now?" "Yes." "And will you use that fear?" "No." "Then what will you do?" Lira turned her gaze back to the roots beneath her. "The same thing I always do," she murmured. "Sit quietly. Train. Endure. But if someone else grabs you?" She tilted her head, a faint echo of the line she'd spoken earlier. "They won't." The insectoid nodded slowly, understanding in a way no one else had bothered to. Then it stepped back, giving her space, and disappeared into the vine-draped walkway. She was alone again. The lights dimmed further. The fog thickened into a soft blanket. Night cycle descended across the orbital spire, but Lira didn't move. She stayed beneath the tree until the station hum softened, her breathing syncing with the slow pulse of bioluminescent leaves. She wasn't waiting for danger. She was waiting for peace. But peace rarely came to deathworlders. And when it did, it came only in moments like this, where the universe finally learned why silence was more terrifying than any weapon. She rose only when the spire shifted into dawn cycle, the leaves flickering awake with soft silver light. She brushed a hand along the bark, appreciating its steady glow, then stepped onto the walkway. By the time she reached the exit, cadets gathering for morning routines parted instinctively. Not out of hatred. Not out of prejudice. Out of recognition. Out of respect. Out of understanding that strength did not always roar. Sometimes strength sat quietly. Sometimes strength whispered warnings. Sometimes strength snapped a giant's spine without standing. She walked the corridor without looking back, her pace steady, her breath calm, her mind already drifting toward the next quiet place she could hide from all this noise. They feared her now. But they also listened. And for the first time since arriving at the station, Lira realized something simple. Silence had finally found its voice.